How can the Baltimore Ravens help Lamar Jackson during the 2023 offseason? We talk about that, DeAndre Hopkins, offensive coordinator updates, and more coming up next here on this Friday edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back and welcome into another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here, of course, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today, being here, making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including in video form over on YouTube. So be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, follow along in audio form. And this episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. And here with me today is former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail. And Q, we're on one full week of offensive coordinator search for the Ravens as they parted ways with Greg Roman last Thursday. And some names have been taken off the market a tiny bit. There's still plenty of names for Baltimore out there. But first, before we talk about the offensive coordinator situation, I do want to talk about some comments from your former teammate who went on inside the NFL and talked a bit about his whole stance on the Lamar situation and the fact that he wants to see the organization get Lamar some help, saying Lamar needs help, talked about how he wants to see him in more of a deep ball passing system. And he talked about how, they have Mark Andrews over there, and we all know who Mark Andrews is. But then there are just some other guys over there. So to you, Q, what do you think the Ravens need to do? When you think about getting Lamar Jackson some help, what does that mean to you?
So I think this is a multi-layered question, and we're going to break it down back and forth for sure. Obviously, priority number one is an offensive coordinator that would complement the skill sets that Lamar brings to the table. And I thought, we reference an awful lot 2019 and even 2020 for somewhat of what we saw in the old school system of what Greg Roman was about. And that 2019 season, we dubbed the term bully ball. But when you look at what Lamar had, you had, yes, Mark Andrews, but you also had Hayden Hurst. And as I was watching, this past weekend's divisional round playoff game, and I saw what Cincinnati was doing, and I saw how they utilize Hayden Hurst. Obviously, he caught a touchdown pass and all that against Buffalo. Ironically enough, when they went up to Buffalo, the Ravens did. He had a huge touchdown against the Bills out of a bunch formation that sprung him, and he just outran every defender on his way to, I think that was like one of, if not the longest touchdown of his career. I preface all that by saying you had a lot of talent in the tight end room. You never really fully replaced the talent in subsequent years. The times where you went to the outside, Miles Boykin, and to a lesser degree in Hollywood Brown, I say lesser, not because of his talent, but just in the way in which your offense flowed, you didn't really fully develop a passing on the outside lane attack, and you used some tight ends that were just okay. Now, Mark Andrews was still Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews flourished. He got an extension. Hallelujah, he was the go-to guy. The way in which, from an injury standpoint, or the way in which teams started taking away Mark and not really having that other dominant threat for Lamar to go to, left him kind of handcuffed. We know what happened with Hollywood feeling like, hey, I'm a soldier. And being that soldier, I'm kind of frustrated because you didn't get me the ball. Okay. They let him go. They let Hayden Hurst go. They let Orlando Brown Jr. go. All that being said, they retooled the offensive line. The injuries from the running back room healed up. They came back this year. They had some young guys that just wasn't necessarily the seasoned guy that Hayden Hurst was. Will he be? Meaning Isaiah Likely, strong potential to be. Will Charlie Kohler remains to be seen. But I think where we are looking at Ray Lewis talk about how the offense, Lamar Jackson having to be Superman, I think the offense, there was no counterpunch. There was no, once you took away this, Mark Andrews, there was no that. That early on was Rashad Bateman. You saw that in the Miami game. The year prior to, you saw it in the game against the Cleveland Browns where Lamar gets the bone bruise and you had a healthy shoulder Tyler Huntley being able to throw him the ball. He had 7 catches, 103 yards. A lot of that was man-to-man, and he was making guys pay. But, again, there was no counterpunch. So when you say, okay, we need Lamar to get some help, absolutely we need him to get some help. But where? And how does that look from an offensive coordinator standpoint? And how does that look when it comes to Eric DeCosta spending money either via free agency on wide receiver? That's where I look at this totality and layered question that you asked me.
Yeah, and you made all great points there, and it kind of feeds right into what I wanted to ask you next, because there have been varying opinions on just what was the issue and what has been the issue. I think a lot of people do understand that, there hasn't been an investment in the wide receiver position in terms of actual going out there and signing veterans or trading for veterans. They've invested the draft capital. I mean, they spent 2 first-round picks in 3 years on wide receivers. But Q, do you think, I'll ask you, what do you think will help Lamar more, assuming he's back in Baltimore? Do you think a new offensive system will help him more? Or do you think the Ravens, if they go out there and get him a wide receiver or multiple personnel changes in that offense, do you think that would help him more?
I think the Greg Roman vitriol, you can, if you're a Lamarite by definition, I kind of dubbed it, is a guy who you can't say anything negative about Lamar. You can't just have a good, strong football conversation without the guy or woman going loco and thinking, you're just a hater. Or, you can't. Okay, whatever. So for all the Lamarites that want to chime in, quiet. People are talking football right now. From a football standpoint and what we are discussing, I think Greg Roman never gave them a counterpunch. So while bully ball was successful historically in some respects, again, we talked about all that as far as the personnel, but once the injuries started happening and you didn't have any other talent, that's where it failed. To come in and take away some of the success of the running game aspect of it would be bad. But I think at the same time, giving Lamar an opportunity to explore a Mike McDaniel-esque type of an offense where, you're putting so much pressure on the defense with the way you run the ball that now the counterpunch is the run-pass option. We see that up in Nick Sirianni and his offense with the Eagles and Jalen Hurts and how they're functioning. Whoever it is as a coordinator has to have that level of creativity. I think that's where, to Hollywood Brown's point of view, he felt like it was frustrating. We saw snippets of what it could be like back when they were down in Miami, and it was the Hollywood Brown show off of that run pass option because they were trying to take away so much of the run game. My God, he was cooking them. And what did he have, like 3 touchdowns that day? And there was just big play after big play after big play. So Lamar could sling it down the field. Lamar could sling it to the outside guy, all those things, and take advantage of the run pass option elements. And that's what I think is successful. He can spread people out as well. We've seen that multiple times as well. Lamar is multifaceted. I don't think he's one dimensional at all. And to have anyone say otherwise, then they're not seeing the full picture of who Lamar Jackson really is.
Right. I think what Lamar brings you is you want to put him in an offensive system that I think maximizes all of his skill set as opposed to parts of it. And, for Greg Roman, I will say he was not I don't think he's a bad offensive coordinator. I just think the system outgrew what the Ravens needed in that moment. So for what the Ravens need to do offensive system wise, definitely put in something I think maybe a bit more innovative passing game wise, and they don't have to tear it down from scratch. I think they can still keep some things that they did over the past 4 years. But if you can bring in, and I talked about it on yesterday's show, kind of talking internal versus external candidates, if you bring in somebody with different ideas and different kind of thought processes, I think you can take the good from the previous offense and then combine that with the good from a new offense and do that. But coming up here, we'll talk a bit more on the personnel side of things, talking about how the Ravens could bring in a couple maybe wide receiver options during the 2023 offseason. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a lot to dive into here on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. And as a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more effectively and efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. And I've used LinkedIn for a ton of things throughout my life. LinkedIn Jobs help you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. You can identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications all on one platform. And in 2023, I think it's important to be achieving your goals, and the right team member could help you do that. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one, delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Qadry Ismail. And Q, it's been forever. We've talked about this wide receiver position in Baltimore, especially over the Lamar Jackson era, and just how the Ravens haven't gone out there and gotten Lamar his Stephon Diggs or his DeAndre Hopkins or his A.J. Brown. And it's been a very big topic of conversation over the past really 4 years. They haven't gone out and gotten him anything, but there has been, especially during the offseason or end of season press conference that John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta had, they said they're going to be looking into that position and kind of figuring out what to do with it. And I think this is the offseason where if you do commit to Lamar, I think this is the offseason where you commit to actually going out there and getting him a big time weapon. Now, Hopkins is reportedly going to be on the trade block again, maybe made available here by the Cardinals. But I know we talked about it a little bit a couple of weeks ago, but do you think that this is the offseason cue that the Ravens should go out there, and if Lamar is back, or even if he isn't back, even if he isn't, should this be the offseason the Ravens go out there and finally address that wide receiver position and get that wide receiver one?
It's interesting because Derek Mason and Quan Bolden, I throw myself in that equation early on in the 2000s. The way in which you have a security blanket for Kyle Bowler into Joe Flacco, you had a security blanket in Anquan Bolden for the Joe Flacco era as well in the latter part of his time frame. And then, as you just perfectly said, with the other guys and the A.J. Browns and so forth, gosh, it is one of those things where, Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, my goodness, you look at Justin Jefferson and what, heck, I mean, he's a finalist for an MVP. The receiver, when you see a chunk play, whether it be run after catch or whether it be a manufactured big play down the football field, that is so deflating to a defense. And I think for a quarterback to throw a contested ball and your guy come up with it, mother of pearl, you live in large. So, yeah, John Harbaugh talked about the receiver room is going to look different. We keep hearing, people feel confident, comfortable with James Prochet, but development is development is development. And like just because you did it in college, rightly, wrongly, whatever, we don't know every little thing from the outside. But what I can tell you, something ain't right when you're not on the field. And the only time you really truly get on the field is when they absolutely see that you are your last or their last choice. So with all that, like Eric DaCosta got to do his due diligence. Who are the free agents out there that, aren't the, team cap friendliest, like a late in the season Dez Bryant or a Joe Flacco era Michael Crabtree, um, Wallace. Mike Wallace was, you know, yeah, but we need that dude. You need that dude, and I think that's something where, if it is DeAndre Hopkins, you're looking at 3rd and 8, you're going to get a first down. You're looking at the red zone, you're going to get a touchdown. You're looking at 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 2, regardless of those two, if you want to go play action, it's going to work. The contested catch, you got a number one corner that you're going to go up against. No problem. I got a number one receiver says he's about to house him. That is what you need, and that's the criteria that has to be put out in front for the organization. I think if they really are saying, well, we want to put, new faces in that receiver room.
Right. And I think it is time. And honestly, I think it has been time. And a point that I made to you on shows throughout this week is the fact that as much as I was clamoring for a number one guy in the offseason last year for the Ravens, I don't think them trusting their young guys was misguided. But they went into that knowing they could not afford to lose Rashad Bateman at all. And if they did, their season was probably a little doomed. And the same thing with Devin Duvernay. And they lost both of them. And on top of that, as you talked about, we didn't see a jump from James Prochet. We didn't see a jump from Tylan Wallace. Their number one receiver at the end of the year was Demarcus Robinson. They had to go out and they had to sign a 36-year-old Deshaun Jackson. They had to place a claim for Sammy Watkins. That was the worst case scenario 10 times over. And it seemed like every single thing happened there. So I think that they should. And it's something where let's look at the 4 teams that are still in the playoffs right now: Kansas City, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. Philadelphia has A.J. Brown. The 49ers have Deebo Samuel. The Bengals
and
have
Devontae Smith.
And that's right. Yep. And Devontae Smith. You have the Bengals with so many weapons, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler.
T. Higgins is like a 1A. You can't even say he's like a number 2. He's a 1A.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead, take away my guy Jamar. And Joe is like, ha, because you're going to match up against a lesser corner, and I'm going to dominate you with T. Higgins. And, oh, by the way, I got Boyd in my back pocket, who is a bona fide number 2.
Right. So you have all that. So the only team that you could say, well, there's not a pure wide receiver one there is Kansas City, who, first of all, has Travis Kelce, who I know him and Mark Andrews are, going back and forth for who's the best tight end in the NFL at this point. But then they have Juju. They sent a third for Kadarius Toney. They have Mecole Hardman over there. They drafted Sky Moore. They have options in that offense where, sure, you can compare that to the Ravens and say, well, Mark Andrews plus Rashad Bateman, but then, I think Devin Duvernay is a pretty solid wide receiver 3. Like, he showed steps this year and showed encouragement to me, but I just think you need to add that pure number one guy. So to me, the most realistic high profile guy I'd probably say is DeAndre Hopkins, mostly because he won't cost you a first rounder at this stage in his career. I think he could get away with trading a 3rd and a 4th for a DeAndre Hopkins. But my question to you, Q, is would you rather, let's say the Ravens have $20 million allocated to that wide receiver position. You could get DeAndre Hopkins, who has a $19 million cap hit, or you could go out there in a semi-weak-ish wide receiver class that features Juju Smith-Schuster and DJ Chark and Allen Lazard and Jacoby Myers, and you can sign 2 of those guys, 2 mid-tier options for $10 million apiece. So would you rather have that one high-profile guy or 2 mid-tier options?
We just finished talking about the mid-tier option guys, and those mid-tier option guys, you had the Michael Crabtrees, you had the Mike Wallaces, you had those guys in your history of your franchise. So, okay, I mean, if that's your model, what did we just finish saying? Like, well, we know this: T. Higgins ain't mid-tier. And we know Jamar Chase definitely is bona fide number one. Amari Cooper has number one written all over him as well. He's been there, done that. Pittsburgh, Pickens just went up against our number one corner at their place and came back at our place. What's up? Like he got some street cred too. What are we doing here? Okay, like what are we doing? Is there a Pickens in the draft? Cool. Maybe you'll get a 1A then, but we can't continue to repeat the same thing and expect a different result. And that's where I think what Ray is talking about. And literally, when you look at the bigger picture of your division, if it's about playoffs and advancing in the playoffs, you can't just go ahead with one dude and think that that's okay. And let me say it, like, Kohler and Likely, they're going to have to, like, jump up. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Travis Kelce, run after catch, is far superior than Mark Andrews. Y'all can go ahead and hate on that and think I'm tripping, but go ahead and look at the tape, and it's just different. Now, we got Mark Andrews. I am a Mark Andrews dude. Hey, okay. But you got to look at, like, all right, Kohler, Likely, y'all got them young, fresh legs. It seems like Mark has been kind of, getting some dinged up here and there, and he's a good, strong, upper tier, like, dude, gonna get you some numbers and all that. But man, Travis Kelce, red zone, they're gonna let him be fancy with the spices. Out in the field, they're gonna let him be fancy with the spices. Them option routes that you see him running are certainly looking different than the option routes that you see Mark Andrews running. And Mark had some drops. You don't see that many going out of Travis Kelce the way we saw it with Mark. So there's some things there offensively that you gotta address.
For me, I feel like how nice would it be if you were to I've said it. I still think Rashad Bateman has number one wide receiver potential, but how nice would it be to have?
I think he has T. Higgins 1A. I don't think he is Jamar Chase.
How nice would it be if you could have him as like your number two for a couple of years, where the DeAndre Hopkins is your number one, and kind of you mentioned like the 1A. If you have DeAndre Hopkins is your, hey, we know this is the guy in the clutch we can go to from the wide receiver position. You have Bateman as your two. You can have Duvernay as your three. Plus you have Mark Andrews. Plus you have the running game, and plus you have Lamar Jackson. Obviously, if he comes back. I think it just elevates you so much at that point to where, you got to work out the money. How do they fit everybody in under the cap? I understand. But you just kind of look at that offense on paper, and I'm thinking, man, who is stopping that unit, especially if you have a new offensive system in that category as well. So we'll continue this conversation on our final segment coming up. We'll be talking a bit about the offensive system, what it could look like, candidates who are now crossed off the Ravens list, and who could still be on it. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to dive into on the show. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And the NFL playoffs are here, and we're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On, because they're the number one sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets, from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. I'm looking at the FanDuel Sportsbook here at the time of this recording. The money line for the Bengals and Chiefs game, you got the Bengals plus 102, the Chiefs minus 120. I think it's going to be a good game. I have the Chiefs winning right now, so that's where my money's at. But there's definitely a chance that the Bengals could pull this one out for sure. And there's so much to do on FanDuel, all an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more. A FanDuel official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We are back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Qadry, Ismail, and Q. Let's shift away from personnel a tiny bit and talk a bit about the offensive coordinator search, because we've been about a week into it now, a little over. And some coordinators have been crossed, or potential coordinators have been crossed off the list. Frank Reich getting the head coaching job over in Carolina. That was an option I was kind of excited about. So he's going to get the opportunity to go be the head coach over there. Nathaniel Hackett, someone we kind of dove into a little bit last week, took the offensive coordinator job with the Jets. So he is now off that list. But the Ravens have interviewed a couple of guys. Zach Robinson, reportedly, who was the pass game coordinator over in Los Angeles. Chad O'Shea, wide receiver coach, pass game coordinator over there in Cleveland. Some reported big names, too. Reich was on that list from Jeremy Fowler, but also Eric Bieniemy, who was a very intriguing option if he would take that lateral move. Is there any name out there to you that you feel like would be your top choice right now? Or are you kind of just seeing how it all plays out for now?
Well, I mean, I definitely think Eric Bieniemy, it would be a lateral move. I don't know what that looks like for him. I honestly think what's our guy down in Tampa who just recently fell on a sword and used him
Byron
as a
Leftwich.
scapegoat. Thank you, Byron. Like, I think those guys, there's something about being in the room with Lamar, I think would help elevate the environment. Now, Zach Robinson, what I thought was really intriguing was the way in which he took Baker Mayfield from off the dog heap and off the trash heap, I should say, dog heap, trash heap, Cleveland Browns, I guess. Anyway, took him off the trash heap, and like you could see where there's thought process to what he needs to do, how he needs to go about doing it. And so I think that there is of value as well. There are some things that all of them bring to the table, but those three guys, in my mind, Robinson, Leftwich, and Bieniemy, if he looks at going across the board as opposed to going up, as an opportunity that I would welcome for the Ravens.
Yeah, and with Bieniemy, there are a couple of things to factor into it. He signed a couple of one-year deals with Kansas City for the past couple of seasons, so his contract is actually up after this year. So he could decide to either return there or go somewhere else. And now the questions with him is how much of it is Andy Reid? Does he want to get out of the Andy Reid shadow? Because I think he's deserving of a head coaching opportunity, but he just hasn't gotten it over the course of these last couple of seasons. But Q, finally, I want to ask you a bit about just what you think the offensive system for Lamar should be, and like what you think if that partnership continues, which I know the hope is. Do you want to see him in a pro style offense? Do you want to see him in a West Coast system? Do you want to see an emphasis on timing routes, on the deep passing game? What is your ideal Lamar Jackson offensive system that Baltimore could give him?
Again, I think if we look at what Philly did, I think if we looked at what 49ers did, I think if we looked at what Mike McDaniel with his own stamp of what the 49ers did, I think all those things, I think if we looked at what Gary Kubiak did when he was here, my God, man, like all of that, whether you go inside zone, outside zone, whether you keep some of the concepts of Greg Roman, get the defense to move, get them moving, make them think, make them run. And then you got the talent of Lamar. But then if you spread out a team, still get them moving, and you have receivers that can like blast it open with the groove of how they can get into zones or how they can, what I feel is take advantage of the 8th, 9th guy in the box, and you're man to man on the outside. Like, my God, man, that's an offense. The run pass option is just, I think, spread them out, run pass option, whether it be up tempo, whether it be muddle huddle, whether it be, at the line, make some calls, then go. whether it be, have him under center, like I said, stretch, wide zone stretch, pull it out there, and, you got your waggle action. I don't know. Like, I haven't seen a naked boot waggle action for Lamar. Yeah, I'm not that I'm stumped, but I'm stumped. I'm like, huh, maybe there was, and I just, but it wasn't on a regular. That's what I'm saying. So, yeah, those are the ways in which I'm thinking how he could be an effective. Like, there are times where I would see, the outside receiver just sitting there man to man, and like, G-Roll would call like a concept away from it, and I'm like, dang it, you're not even giving Lamar a chance just to be like, man, if I see it, I can go to it if I want to. And all the quarterbacks that I've played with had that opportunity. And even, today's guys, like, all right, Joe Burrow in the Bills game, he saw everybody, taken away. He was like, yep, I'm going to go right back on over because I see you trying to play man-to-man on Jamar. I'm going to go to him. It was incomplete. The fact that he was like, I don't care, complete or not complete, I'm going to make y'all be honest. And so that's what I look for when I say, what Lamar is about and what he's capable of.
And I think one thing that I'd like to see also just implementing some screen passes in this offense. It felt like we never saw pure screen passes, and whenever they ran one, the joke was, the Ravens ran a screen pass. Like, it's the first time in like 10 years they've done that because we haven't seen them do that a lot. So if you can implement that, it's a great blitz beater. If you're sending people at the quarterback, you just throw a screen out there, put blockers in front, you can pick up chunk yardage there. So we're talking about, how can Lamar Jackson get help from the Ravens? Personnel is one part of it, but also the offensive system he's in, I think, is a whole nother part of just how they can do that for him. But Q, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for hopping on, joining me here today. And again, maybe next week we will have that next offensive coordinator, have that next offensive system. But for now, we're just in wait and see mode.
We are wait and see, and it's fun to wait and see because we got a long off season. Hopefully, Lamar and EDC are in the training room having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and a midnight snack. Come on now, get the contract done.
That's what it should be. Hopefully that contract will get done. Hopefully we'll get a new offensive coordinator soon. Plenty of storylines for the Ravens this offseason, but that's all I have for you here today on Locked on Ravens. Again, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, follow along in audio form as well. When we get back here on Monday, we'll be diving into more Ravens content, of course, so be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you right back here on Monday.